Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to talk about reinforcing and sistering floor joists and give you some pro tips on that stuff. So on a recent remodeling project, it's probably a 300-year-old house, our client asked us if we could reduce the bounce feeling that she was getting out of her bedroom floor when she walked on it. Floor deflection, it's common in older homes because the floor joists used back then were smaller and typically they spanned longer than what codes allow today. Reinforcing floor joists is best done by doubling up the floor joists. Now, since we were removing the ceiling below, the lath and plaster below, and we had access to below that bedroom, I suggested that we sister full span 7¼ inch LVLs across the whole span of the room. In the remodeling trades, we call this sistering the joist. Sistering joists can solve a lot of problems like sagging, uneven, or even strengthening undersized floor joists. Sistering basically adds structural integrity to damaged joists. It can be used to level floors. It's a great problem solver. The building codes are silent on sistering joists, and this is because sistering is a reinforcement to an existing structure, not new construction. Now, there are two methods of sistering. The first is full-length sistering and bearing, and the second is mending or scabbing sistering. Full-length sistering is the strongest method and my preferred method when possible. This method extends the entire length of the joist and has full bearing support on each end. Whether it's a wall plate or a ribbon from a balloon frame house, doesn't matter. This method requires a minimum of 1.5 inches, but preferably 3 inches of bearing at each end. An alternative to this, to getting the joist to bear on a wall or something, is you can install joist hangers on a wall or maybe supported by mid-joist blocking and then hang your joist off of that. In some remodeling situations, it's sometimes too difficult or impossible to get a sister joist onto a bearing point. It just is. I find in these situations, using a mending plate or plywood gussets, plywood scabs, can help tremendously. A mending plate is typically a 2x joist. It's fastened onto a section of the joist to strengthen it. Now, there are 2 rules of thumb that I follow when installing mending plates. First, install your sistered mending plate 2/3 the length of the original joist if you can, and that will also fix joist sag. The second rule of thumb is extend your repair 3 feet on either side of the damaged, notched, or drilled hole, whatever you're trying to fix. This method reinforces the damaged area, and the joist ends on either end can handle the additional weight easily from that sister. The further away from the point of deflection that you can get on a mending joist, the better. So just go as long as you can go. Again, it's always best to run a sister joist over an entire span and onto bearing points if possible. Now, plywood scabbing is also an effective method, and I use it a lot. It allows you to add strength and fix minor problems that are affecting floor joists. I will often use construction adhesive, 8-penny ring shank nails, sometimes some structural screws, and I will scab plywood, 3/4 inch plywood on both sides of a joist when I can. Now, when scabbing, I try to use the full 8-foot rip if possible, or at least the longest length that I can fit in the space. A pro tip for you guys is plumbing holes and notches can obviously compromise the strength of a floor joist. Many times, in anticipation of the plumber's arrival on our job site, I'll apply 3/4 scabs to floor joists where I know they're going to drill and install drains for plumbing traps and stuff like that. Sometimes sistering a joist, it's just not an option due to existing plumbing or field conditions. So in this situation, we head off the joist or create what some folks call a plumber's box, right? So the purpose of the joist headers that we put in for the plumber's box is to transfer the load of the floor to the adjacent trimmer joists. The use of joist hangers when you're doing this obviously facilitates and strengthens your repair. Now, a pro tip here is a single header connected to a cut joist and fastened to 2 uninterrupted strong joists, not damaged, will work in openings of 4 feet or less. If the header spans more than 4 feet, both header and the trimmer joist should be doubled up. Now, as a rule of thumb, I personally always install a double header and sometimes sister back as far as I can reach on those trimmer joists, even under 4 feet. All right, so back to the project that we were doing, taking the bounce out of our client's floor. There were 8 steps that we followed, and to get a successful result. The first step is to remove any blocking, wiring, plumbing, HVAC in your way. That's obvious. And then the second step is to basically measure your joists and the existing joists and measure and cut your new joist to that length. If you're sistering a partial joist, use the 2/3 rule we talked about. Now, a pro tip here is to ease fitting, we cut a 25 degree bevel on the top edge of our joist, about a 1/2 inch in and 1/2 inch down, leaving an inch on top of the top edge. And that's going to allow the joist to just kind of slide over the floor a little bit and slide into place. It just gives you a little less friction. One thing I want to mention to you guys is that you might need to cut your new joist a little smaller than the existing in order to get it up on top of a top plate or a ribbon or something like that. Just make sure that you try to achieve at least 1.5 inches of bearing. Look, if you can't, you can't. Just get it up there. The third step is to install the joist by sliding it into the joist bay, up and in, and then tilting it up. Sounds easy, right? It's not. The goal here is to ensure that the sister joist sits nice and tight against the old joist. So when you fasten it, you're basically mating it together. If that old joist has sagged a little bit, deflected, you will have difficulty getting a full-size sister joist in. If you cannot fit the sister joist against the old due to sagging, then you can jack up the old joist to create some space. Now, a pro tip is for you guys is if you're installing a partial joist, you might also have to jack up the old joist to get it level and then your sister mending partial joist to repair that. Okay, let's talk about jacking that joist. I use a 6-ton hydraulic jack and I put it right under the old joist, supported by a board spanning across the floor joists, whichever way they run. That board helps spread the downward pressure of the jack across multiple floor joists below. I then fasten a 2x4, double 2x4 together to make a jack post, and I slowly jack that sag out of the joist, creating enough room to get my new joist into position. Jacking too fast can cause cracks and all kinds of stuff, so just be aware of that. Jack slowly and don't jack too much. What can I say? After lifting that jack post up, I use a 3-pound hammer and I kind of bang it into place to get it against that joist. A good pro tip for you guys is if the joist is hitting the top plate or beam and the subfloor above, and jacking is just not an option, it's just not going to help you get that joist in. An alternative approach is to cut the 25 degree bevel I talked about earlier on 2 opposing edges that touch the plate and the subfloor above. And so what that does is the bevels help the joist turn with less friction so that you can get it upright in a proper resting position. Remember that when you're cutting those bevels, only cut about a 1/2 inch off the edge, the joist edge, leaving 1 inch for bearing. The 5th step is deciding level versus flat. Level is not always achieved, right? But it's certainly desired. And flat is usually the consolation prize to level, especially when remodeling 200, 300-year-old homes. On our project, we used a combination of string lines, 6-foot levels, and a rotary laser to get the bottoms of our new joists level. While installing the joists, we considered all of the level flat information as we were working, and we raised and lowered our jack post as needed, or sometimes we even had to trim the joist bearing, the bottom bearing edge of the LVL joist to assist in leveling. The 6th step is to fasten the new joist to the old one once you're satisfied. So we installed a series of 3-inch Fasten Master headlock structural screws, kind of in a W pattern, following the manufacturer's recommendations. Once secured, we would release the jack pressure if it was in fact being used and remove the jack and move to the next joist. The 7th step is to install solid blocking perpendicular to the joists. Solid blocking helps to transfer weight to the adjacent joists, makes for a stronger floor. We snap a mid-span line because we had a 13-foot span right in the middle. We cut our blocks a hair stronger and we tap them in place with a hammer. We want a snug fit. And then we install toe-nailed framing nails to put them in place, not screws. Installing the blocking in a straight line, not alternating on either side of your line, is a stronger connection. Now, a pro tip for you guys, for joist spacing greater than 12 inches on center, install your blocking every 6 to 8 feet. We had a 13-foot span, we just went right down the middle. use dry lumber and install your blocking tight, because loose blocking, like anything, can sometimes cause squeaks. All right, moving on, the last step of this process is to strap the ceiling. We install 1x3 ceiling strapping, 16 inches on center to the ceiling joist. Strapping is installed with two 8-penny ring shank nails per joist, and it seems to be like a northeast kind of thing, but I like strapping for a couple of reasons. We've always done it, but it allows us to shim the ceiling a little bit more if we need to. We can shim it level. And two, electrical wiring can be snaked through that 3/4 space created by the strapping. Hey, look, for future wiring, running, or maybe adding recessed lighting or something like that, it can be helpful. So guys, to conclude, joist sistering, it's an effective way to repair existing damaged or inadequate floor joists, add structural strength to a sagging floor. But look, if you're concerned about structural integrity, you're not really competent on that, or of a sagging, cracked, or twisted joist, or you're not sure how to proceed, I would highly suggest just reach out and call a structural engineer to do the inspection for you. A structural engineer, they're gonna provide you with some guidance and a plan for reinforcement and strengthening. It's just a smart thing to do. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Rob Robillard. Please give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear how you guys sister things and what kind of issues you run into, or tricks or pro tips. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because it helps with our rankings. It also lets you know when we publish any additional content. Take care. Bye-bye.